Stand up for righteousness. Stand up for justice. Stand up for truth.
I truly believe that thoughts are the greatest vehicle to change.
We do not care whether the cat is black or white, as long as it can catch mice.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Victory in spite of all terror. Victory however long and hard the road may be.
To those waiting with bated breath for that favorite media catchphrase, the U-turn, I have only one thing to say. U-turn if you want to. The ladies not for turning.
He who is not courageous enough to take risks will accomplish nothing in life, is a quote by Muhammad Ali, known as one of the greatest heavyweight boxers of all time. Ali was an Olympic gold medalist, celebrated for his charisma, athleticism, and social activism. I thought this was an apt quote for our guest today, an Australian sporting legend, renowned for reaching new heights on the athletics field and a strong advocate for having a crack. Our guest today is Steve Hooker, OAM, Olympic gold medalist and former Australian pole vaulter. As one of the standout stars of the 2008 Beijing Olympics, Steve became the first Australian field athlete to win Olympic gold in 60 years and the first Australian man to ever hold both the Olympic and world titles concurrently. Off the track, Steve has made significant strides in the corporate world as founder and director of IHI Projects and as a director of Steve Hooker Sports and the Sport Australia Hall of Fame. His impressive career also includes various senior roles, including his tenures as Chief Executive Officer at Resimax Group, Chief Executive of Access Telehealth, and Chairperson of the Athletes Commission for the Australian Olympic Committee. Hello and welcome to another episode of No Limitations, a show where we speak to elite world-class performing men and women and unlock the secrets and influences that have shaped their destinies and that you could apply to your own life. For our first-time listeners from all over the world, please don't forget to follow on your preferred podcast platform and share with your friends and colleagues. And for our listeners in France, China, and Australia, a big hello. I am your host, Greg Robinson, Managing Partner of Blenheim Partners, board and executive search firm. In this episode, we journey with Steve as he takes us behind the scenes of the Olympic Games, debunks myths about Olympians, and provides an insider's perspective on elite athletics. Steve unveils the rigorous preparation and dedication required to excel at the pinnacle of sports, recounting his personal journey from navigating the immense pressure of being a favourite to the electrifying moment of clinching gold at Beijing's Bird's Nest, amidst an 80,000-strong crowd. We explore Steve's early sporting influences, his transition into the corporate world, and his ascent to becoming a CEO and founder. Additionally, Steve provides his insights on the standout athletes to keep an eye on leading up to the Paris Olympic Games. So sit back and enjoy Flight to Gold. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
What is the greatest misconception of the life of an Olympian or a gold medalist in particular?
Whoa. Geez, that's a big one off the start. I would say the greatest misconception is that, in my view, is that you've lived this life of sacrifice. I certainly didn't feel that way about my sporting career. Everyone says, oh, you must have sacrificed so much to be able to have achieved your goals. Whereas I take the other view, which was I had the privilege of being able to do something that I just loved and I would have done for free. I would have done, it was my hobby anyway. It was what I wanted to do with my spare time. And I got to do it at the highest level and for a period of time as my profession. So I thought it's the privilege that I had. It wasn't a sacrifice in any way, shape or form. So I would say that's the biggest misconception. There's all this sacrifice. There's these things you miss out on. And a lot of people would say, oh, you miss all the parties you miss or this or that. And I'm like, I would give up 30 parties just knowing that I got to attend the Sports Illustrated party at the Athens 2004 Olympics. It's just like, it's worth 30 parties just going to that one party. So even that, you're not even sacrificing. So there you go.
And what's it feel like to be an Olympian?
It's something I've given a lot of thought to. I was the chair of the Athletes Commission at the Australian Olympic Committee for 5 years. And we spent a lot of time on this. As a group, we were part of bringing together the Australian Olympians Oath. And it was all about that. It was all about what it means to be an Olympian, what it means to become an Olympian, and then what it means to be an Olympian for the rest of your life. What do you carry with you? Because once you're an Olympian, you're always an Olympian. How does it feel to be an Olympian? Well, there's a responsibility, I think, that comes with it. So there's the privilege of representing your country, and then there's a responsibility that you have for that. So whenever there's an opportunity to have other Australians benefit from the experience that you've had, then it's your obligation to do the best you can with that. So I feel like there's a responsibility comes with it, and there's also a sense of pride, I think, that you've got this really tangible thing that reflects or is a reflection of the effort you've put into something.
So what's going on through the minds of all those young athletes in preparation, not that far away now from Summer Paris Olympics?
Depends. I went to 3 Olympics. I went to an Olympics that was my first. It was my first senior team, so I was very young and inexperienced. I went to one where I was going in, certainly in my mind, I was one of the favourites, but it certainly is my mind as the favourite. And then I went to one where I was probably slightly past my best. So I'll give you 3 examples of what they were thinking. The first ones, generally, some people will be at their first games and be one of the favourites. It's a unique position to be in. That's a challenging position to be in because it's overwhelming. It's sensory overload at every turn. So you hope that they've got experienced teams around them that have been there before and can help them navigate through that sensory overload and enable them to get the best performance out of themselves and also the best experience, enjoy it as they go through it as well. Going in as favourite with a bit of experience, I was very aware of how rare it is. So having competed in Athens and not had the performance that I wanted and knowing that feeling of being on the track and how far away 4 years seems at that point in time, I knew that feeling of not getting it right and the regret that you feel around that. And when you're in the window of performance, when you're ready to put up a performance at the very top level and knowing that you'll get that one chance, that might be it, there's a huge sense of pressure when you've been there before and experienced it not happening. So that is what I felt at that period of time, probably too much in hindsight, but it worked for me in the end. And then probably having my third games going in and knowing I certainly wasn't in the top 3 favourites in my event. I was hoping to make a final and have a great day. You rarely outperform your form at a games. It's unusual. So my intent with that games was to enjoy the experience. I was overwhelmed at my first Olympics. I was really highly strung and stressed at my second Olympics. And I wanted to take it all in, enjoy it, take in all the moments of a London Games. And I really did. I enjoyed it. It was the most fun I had in Olympic Games. It was my third. So there you go. That's my 3 examples of how it might feel.
All right, let's take them apart for a sec. Why didn't you get it right at the Athens Games?
I probably jumped to my level. I just had an expectation that I would jump above my level at the Games.
But is that a fair expectation?
Yeah, I think so. That I would a fair expectation that I would jump higher.
Yeah.
I think when you're young, you're used to improving regularly. So at that stage, I was 22. I was on an improvement trajectory, and I was expecting that I'd be able to pull that into the Games. Mentally, I was not as strong as I would later become as a vaulter and a competitor. So looking back, I know that now, and I know what was holding me back at that period of time, and can recognise that now. But probably you're always going in and thinking that it'll be my day, and you have to go in as an optimist. But probably my result was. It was an underperformance, but it was not a dramatic underperformance. It was probably in the field where I was.
And the support from, ultimately you're an individual as opposed to a team member in the sense of the sport that you focus in. What's the feeling as part of the Australian camp? Does it make a big difference? You turn up, you're focusing on your event, someone's focusing on their events in the swimming pool, someone's focusing on their events in the sprints. Am I really in part of this whole Australian camp? Are they really going to lift me up, or is it, just a lot of noise? I need some quiet time.
It's an interesting dynamic. I mean, in my instance, I'm an individual within my event. I compete as an individual. I've got my team around me, coach and support staff and all that sort of stuff around me within my team. Then I'm a part of the athletics team. It's a team within the team at the Olympic Games, and that's your closest group of teammates within the village, and then you're part of the broader Australian team. And I think I found I got a lot of the support from my teammates, my athletics teammates. That's where my support came from. I found I got a lot of my inspiration from the broader Australian team. So in 2008, we were still in our holding camp in Hong Kong when the game started, and seeing Steph Rice win her first couple of medals really early in the program, all of a sudden you're like, all right, it can happen. We can do this. And I took a lot of positive feelings out of her having such success so early in the program. Especially, I still had training to complete and all that sort of stuff, and I wasn't in the village, but I felt like there was momentum within the team, even though I was miles away in Hong Kong. So I think that there's those kind of layers to it, everything, and it all offers sort of different support or inspiration.
So were you there for the opening ceremony?
No, not for 2008. No, we had a just in Hong Kong as an athletics team.
And what's the thinking behind that?
It's a long time to be in the village. Yeah, I mean, my event was I was on the third or second last night of competition on the program. So it's a long time. It can be a bit draining being in the village. It's the same food and routine day in, day out. Training can be tricky. So we'd sort of decided on, like 4 or 5 days before my qualifying round. So you end up being a week in there before your competition, which is heaps. So it's just about making sure you don't get too burnt out in the environment.
So from the 4 years earlier to the day, which we'll talk about in a second, what changed mentally?
Belief and everything, like training environment, technique, competition experience, whole range of things, but mainly belief. Like and belief founded in experience. I knew I had the results. I knew I could perform on a big stage. I knew what it felt like to be at the Olympics, and I knew what it would take in that environment, having sort of watched a good friend of mine, Tim Mack, go through that 4 years earlier. He's the Athens gold medalist, and I'd been with him for most of his lead into that competition. So, yeah, it's sort of belief through experience is what I would say.
So the run up to the big day and the previous meets, how had you performed?
The last competition, there was three of us that were the standouts. We were about a foot ahead of the rest of the world. It was myself, Brad Walker from America, Yevgeny Lukyanenko from Russia.
Yep.
And we all competed in the London Diamond League, Golden League back then. Oh, no, it was a Super Grand Prix. There you go. It wasn't even Diamond League. London Super Grand Prix, the big meet at Crystal Palace.
Okay, yep.
Where it used to be held before the Olympic Stadium was created. And I had a great competition. Yevgeny and I both jumped 5.97, so we both jumped a centimetre higher than what I ultimately would jump at the Olympics. He beat me on a count back, but I felt strong in that competition. And I felt like I had more in me, and I felt like I had the best attempts at 6 metres, which is where the bar went afterwards in that competition. And my season had been growing, whereas I jumped really high early. I jumped to 6 metres early in the year in February in Perth that year, but then I sort of was later in my preparation in Europe than Brad, who'd had American championships, jumped 6.04 at the Eugene meet earlier in the year, sort of in April or May, I think. So he had a really big mark. He had the biggest mark in the world. And then he was extending his season through US trials. And then Yevgeny started the European season really strong. He jumped 6.01. The first meet I jumped against him in Europe. So they jumped quite high early in the European or the Northern Hemisphere summer. And I was really growing as we headed into Beijing. So I felt like I was just hitting my form at exactly the right time.
Okay. You want to maybe sort of paint a scene for us? When you're in the stadium at Beijing, how many people in there? What's it feel like?
I don't know. It was 100,000 odd people in the Bird's Nest in Beijing. It was a big stadium. It was hot and humid.
What time of day?
We were jumping at night. Both qualifying and final were at night for us. So you'd be warming up at kind of dusk, and then getting into the stadium. It's just under lights. It's a pressure cooker. Qualifying round was like a challenge for me. I had 2 misses at my opening height in the qualifying round.
Okay.
And so, one more miss and you're out, and the other miss you're probably guaranteed a spot in the final where I was jumping. So that was a high pressure situation for me. My first jump was not great. My second jump was really good, but I'd made my equipment too soft. Pole was too soft, so I jumped too well for the pole. And so I sort of, at that point had to make a decision to take a bigger pole and back myself that I could replicate that jump, and I did.
Big call.
It was a bit, I think backing your preparation at that point in time. And for me, it was a bit of my experience from 4 years earlier where I just knew something comes to you on a third attempt at the Olympic Games. And so I was like, I didn't want to, I wouldn't have been able to hold back and try and like pace myself and make it work on the softer pole. So I knew that I would want to attack it. And so that meant taking the next stick. The other thing about qualifying that was amazing was our qualifying round was on the same night that the men's 200 metre final was on. And so obviously Bolt had already won the 100 and set a new world record in the process. And so when we saw the 200 was about to start, we were on the actual infield. We're on the bend inside the 200 metre bend. And so I went over with a couple of other guys who weren't having jumps at that point in time, and we stood on the kind of corner of the soccer pitch, the infield, within the stadium, right as they sort of stand up and go straight on the 100 metres. So if you ever watch Bolt's world record winning run in Beijing in 2008, there's a guy in a yellow tracksuit at the 100 metre mark on the infield, and that's me. And it was unbelievable to watch. It was like, so I having had a bit of experience, I could actually absorb and take in some of those amazing moments that surround you, knowing that I had what I was doing under control. We go to the final. It's 24 hours later, hot. There's, 12 or 13 people in the final.
So no injuries, nothing going wrong, all prep all going well, you know.
I was good. Yep, I was good.
No
I
excuses.
felt under control. I felt like I'd blown the cobwebs out in the qualifying round, figured out the venue a little bit. My opening height was good. I jumped 5 metres 65, big jump, good clearance, got myself into the competition well.
Are the other two jumping well as well?
Brad missed the final. Brad had the same situation as me as in the qualifying round. He had blown through, made a pole soft on his second attempt, and as I understand it, he didn't go up a pole. He tried to take a jump on the same pole and then crashed into the bar again, made the pole soft on his last attempt, missed the final. Right. Three attempts, 3 misses.
Okay. So it's down to you and one other.
So it's just me and Yevgeny in the final. And so in the final, I went clear first attempt at 565. Yevgeny, I think, he might have gone to third attempt at that in the final. And then bar goes to 580. He went clear first attempt at 580. It took me 3 jumps to clear 580. And no one else cleared 580 in the competition, so it's down to the two of us. And then it was the bit that people remember if they remember the comp. Bar goes to 5 metres 85. Both of us missed our first 2 attempts. He went clear his third attempt. I went clear my third attempt. It's the ugliest 585 clearance I've ever done in my life. Horrible jump. I sort of took off and started shifting sideways. It looks like I'm going to miss the mat. I finish the jump, somehow scrape over the bar. I land on the mat and go clear. And then bar goes to 5 metres 90. Again, we both miss our first 2 attempts. And then he has his third attempt and it's a miss. And I know it's my opportunity to do what I've set myself for.
All right. So what's going on through the mind then?
Well, I heard the crowd kind of groan when they missed. I didn't watch any of his jumps.
Oh, you don't? You don't watch him?
I wasn't watching him. No, I just listened to know what had happened.
Right.
Well, I didn't want to use any energy. I'm glad I didn't watch either. He was jumping better than me all night. It took me a while to get into my rhythm, and only on my sort of second attempt at 5 metres 90 did I really find my feet and feel really good. So it'd been good that I hadn't been watching him, but I heard that he missed his third attempt, and I just knew it was my moment. And I just like, okay, this is it. Like, just let's go. And then from that point on, I just went through my process. It was the normal process I did before each jump. It was more automatic than it had ever been. Like it was just like the process took over, prepared my grip, prepared my pole, went to my starting mark. The wind was, you always check the wind, make sure it's all good. Wind was good. Official put up the white flag, and just, there was no thought of let's go. Like it was like the process had been set in motion. As soon as I heard that he'd missed, I just knew that this would all flow out. And then it went from being like a very robotic, mechanical kind of comp for me, just trying to like muscle my way through these jumps, to all of a sudden complete flow and fluidity, and finishing like all of a sudden I looked like I could jump again. And it was a great jump, my 590 jump, big clearance, and made all of a sudden the equipment in my body and my run and everything synced up. And it went from being a very difficult, challenging, hard competition to a very easy jump. One of the easiest jumps I've done in my life was that 590 clearance, which gave me the win.
How'd it feel?
Effortless, the whole jump. Like after the most like grindy competition I'd had, it felt like that jump was fully effortless, and I'd mentally prepared for that jump. And I now I know, like when you do so much mental preparation for a specific thing, it just allows your body to be in the moment when you get there, and you almost go on autopilot, or you go into a flow state, would be what a psychologist would say, and you get out of your body's way, and it knows what it's meant to do, and you can just let it do what it's got to do in that moment.
So the mental preparation, what actually is that? Is that you just visualizing and visualizing and visualizing?
Yeah, for me, visualization and just using, it's something I do a lot. Like I probably spend too much of my life living in the future, visualizing future states of various things, projects I'm working on, or relationships, or things in my life. So yeah, it's something that I do a lot, and I think it's a part of what makes me really enjoy the work that I do now in property. Like, you're taking something from something that it is not to something that it will be, and that requires a huge amount of visualization, but then being able to break that back down into a process. So yeah, it's just, for me, imagining the jump from my own perspective, from the perspective of my coach who'll watch it from the side of the runway. I would imagine I would not just have it as any jump, it would be inside the stadium. I would have the bird's nest around me, and it would be on the D, like on the infield, inside the 200-meter bend. Like, I would try and make it as real as possible. And that was, at the time, not really something that like lots of people were doing, or you're being coached to do. It was just something that I naturally did. And every night before bed, I'd be going to sleep for that whole year, and I would just have that jump just going over and over in my head, just the jump to win, knowing it'd be like 590, 6 meters, something like that. And just, what would my jump look like? What would it be like in the stadium? What would it feel like? What would it sound like? And I kind of know it just happened that I just went to sleep dreaming of that jump every night for that whole year. And that was just me visualizing. I didn't even really know that that's what I was doing at the time, if I'm honest.
And just taking that visualization one step further, do you also go to the point of visualizing the gold medal around the neck?
No.
Standing up on the podium, or it's really just on the job at hand?
Yeah, the process, yep.
And was that, when you look back and look at that jump, was that one of your best jumps in form?
It was just my jump. Like, it was the jump I knew I was capable of doing, and it was the jump on the equipment that I knew would allow me to do to clear the bar. So it wasn't me like visualizing something that was beyond my ability. So it was like a very real visualization, my rhythm, my timing, the pole that I needed to be on, a height that I knew I could jump. So it was a very, very realistic set of circumstances. I think again, if the vision is like unbelievable, if it's this like thing that you're trying to convince yourself will be true, but you don't deep down believe it, that's harder to embed, I think.
And what did Yevgeny say to you?
Yevgeny?
Yeah.
I can't remember. Congratulations, I think. I mean, once it's done, congratulations, yeah.
And what's the feeling when you land and you come up and you realise you've won? Is it just relief, or what actually is it, Steve?
The initial feeling is like, oh my God. And I think you see that on my face. And then pretty quickly, there's a bit of an overwhelming feeling like, what have I just done? Like, what have I done, and what does this mean? Because my thought process had not gone beyond that moment. Like, literally the moment where I go over, I go clear. Like, I don't think about landing on the mat or anything like that. I don't visualize what's going to happen next, or a celebration or anything. Like, thoughts for a whole year had been leading up to this one moment. And then beyond that, you're going through a door. I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know how I'm going to feel. So it was, initially, oh my God, then what have I done? And then just like relief and exhaustion, really, like, as you sort of realize that for me, I not missing the opportunity was the thing that I felt the most, that I felt a relief that I hadn't missed the opportunity I had in front of me.
And it's changed your life?
Well, yeah, definitely. I don't know about that phrase. It's become my life.
What do you mean by that?
That is now a part of who I am, that experience. So it informs an interaction I have with most new people that I meet. It presents opportunities to me. It presents some challenges to me. But yeah, it's become a part of my life. And I would say, for the most part, that's for the better than had it not happened.
Steve Hooker doesn't get tired of it sometimes?
No. Oh, you know what? Like, I went and lived in America for 2 years, or just over a year. And I enjoyed that, like, for a little bit. And that had come off the back of like fame or notoriety or whatever. It like wanes over time. But that had come off the back of 4 years of being very well known between 2008 and 2012. I moved to America for a year and was unknown completely. And that was it was really nice, to be honest. So yeah, probably a little bit for a period of time, it was a lot to deal with. But now, as time has gone by, like, a little bit of that is quite nice without having it kind of intruding too much into your life.
So what should we be expecting, Steve, from our athletes?
In Paris?
Yeah.
Well, I'm covering field on the Channel 9 broadcast. I'm covering the field events, and I think we should go well in the field. We've got a number of athletes across the board who can do well. We've got two amazing female high jumpers. We've got Nina Kennedy in the women's pole vault, who's going in as a world champion. Curtis Marshall, who's been dealing with some injuries, but is going in as a world championship medalist in the men's pole vault. Matt Denny, who's just ready to step onto the podium in the men's discus and performing really well in lead-up competitions. Mackenzie Little's throwing the javelin really well. So we've got genuine medal prospects going in, and just a belief within that team that they can get it done, that they've got the track record within the athletics team, particularly in the field events, of winning medals at the last couple of world championships. So they just know how that works, what it looks like, and that is not unrealistic. So I expect the team to do really well. I expect them all to put up strong performances and be in the mix. And then it just comes down to whoever's day it is. And, whether that's going to be the day of our competitors or one of their oppositions. That's the Olympics. That's the story that we'll get to tell, and I'm excited to tell it. And I hope we get up. I hope I get to have some really high points in the broadcast with our athletes performing to their absolute best on the biggest stage, and it'll be wonderful, particularly for, I think about Nicola Olaslagers having won an Olympic medal already, but in an empty stadium. Imagine then going to Paris, full stadium, and being able to repeat that, or even step from silver to gold. What an amazing experience that would be. So those are the sorts of things that I think about that can't wait to be a part of in some small way.
When you catch up with all the athletes and you sit down quietly and just watch them go through their preparation or going to be commentating on them, what are you looking for in terms of that? Like, what is the point of difference between first and second? I know you say it's on the day. Yeah, look, it is on the day, but can you see stuff?
It's different with everyone. Everyone's different. There's no one formula. You've got some people who, and every event's different. In the throws and the horizontal jumps, it can be all over on the first effort. Yeah. Someone just might just do something crazy, hit something that is just out of the box, and that just changes the whole dynamic of the competition, right? And then it's just a flat competition after that where no one feels like they're kind of in the mix. So there's this circumstance that comes, but then there's individuals who you just know will fight and find something. And Kelsey Lee Barber is the greatest example from Australia of that, where she'll probably have a horrible first 2 rounds and she'll have to hit a throw to qualify for the final 3 rounds in the javelin, and she will. And then all of a sudden she'll be sitting outside the medals potentially, like after round 5 or 6. 4 or 5, but then in round 6, she's a round 6 thrower, and she knows in her event, all I've got to do is hit one, and I've got a track record of hitting one, and I believe I'm going to hit one. I'm just going to do it now, and it's almost according to the script. So it's those stories that we tell ourselves so that we can believe that we can get those things out of ourselves, and if it's through lived experience, then you really believe it, and there's a real chance that it happens again, because that's where belief comes from.
So where are you from originally?
I grew up in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, North Balwyn.
Sporting family?
Yeah, sporting family. Mum and Dad were both in athletics. They met on the tour. Dad was a 800-metre runner. Mum was a long jumper. Mum was Olympian, went to 1972 Olympics as an 18-year-old.
How'd she go?
She didn't make the final.
What event?
She was a long jumper. So here's an interesting story.
So there's a bit of spring in the family genes then? Spring
in the family genes. So 1972 long jump, she competed, didn't make the final. It ended up being won by iconic German long jumper. I'm having a mental blank.
Was this the one who got busted with the drugs?
No. She's an icon.
Okay.
What's her name? I'm having a mental blank. You can Google it.
Yep. 1972.
1972 women's long jump. Anyway, her son, can't remember her name, but her son is a guy named Danny Ecker. Danny Ecker was my favourite pole vaulter when I was growing up. He became a pole vaulter. He was a 6-metre pole vaulter, and I loved him when I was like 15, 16, 17. He was my favourite pole vaulter that I loved to follow. Anyway, as it would turn out, Danny and I ended up competing in the final together in 2008.
That's a twist.
So our mums had competed together in 1972. His mum won, and then we competed together in 2008, and I managed to square the ledger. So there you go.
There you go. Now, when you were growing up, what sort of sports were you playing? You into all sorts of sports as a young kid out of Melbourne?
Yeah, whatever. Like I would play school basketball but played a lot of footy. I loved Aussie rules footy growing up. Played at my local club, and yeah, that was winter, and then summer was whatever else.
Okay, well then the obvious question, which I'm sure you heard said 1,000 times, how does one get into pole vaulting? It's not something like, I did athletics and I did footy and I did all the sports as well, but no one has said, come over here, mate, here's a big long bar. How about jumping over something?
Yeah, well, that's just geography. So I grew up in North Bourne, and Box Hill Athletics Club was my local little athletics club.
Yep.
And it's got a huge heritage of pole vault, mainly because of Mark Stewart, who's the coach there. He's built up a pole vault facility and has a pole vault club that has its own poles, which is like equipment and all that sort of stuff. Is a big equipment coaching is what you need to have around you if you're going to have any chance of being a decent pole vaulter. And he's there at Box Hill. And it just happened to be where I turned up as a 12-year-old and started doing my little athletics. And I watched Emma George breaking the women's world record and being a real pioneer in the sport through the 90s. And just after a couple of years of watching her, and being like so drawn to the event, like really interested in it.
Why? What do you love about it?
I just thought it was the coolest event in athletics. And I don't know what it was. And then as soon as I started doing what I loved about it, and then I asked her coach, I asked Mark if I could have a comp. And he said, oh yeah, you're the kid whose mum was an Olympic long jumper. Sure, yeah, you can come in. You look like you've got some genetics. And so I was okay. I was like a mediocre athlete across the board in most of what I did up until that point. I was a bit of a late bloomer physically, just a skinny kid. But yeah, as soon as I started pole vaulting, I just loved it. And what I loved was it's a real problem-solving exercise, really multifaceted event, so many elements to it that you had to get your head around, and that really appeals to me in the way that I think.
Can you talk us through, I'm a novice in this one, so can you talk us through, I can understand long jump, I can understand sprints, I can understand 800. What am I looking for in the pole vault?
You really, you're looking for someone who finds their way of doing it that suits them. So that's off the top. But there'll be some general commonalities. So you've got to have like optimized speed down the runway. So you're going to be running fast but in control.
Yep.
So think of that like a golf swing. You don't want to have the fastest swing where you're swinging beyond your capability because you won't be able to hit it sweet at the end. That's where you've got to like transfer your horizontal energy from your run into stored energy in the pole through the bend.
Yep.
So there's that controlled speed down the runway, and then there's the next piece is connection with the pole, like how you actually connect that speed from the run into the pole without losing energy. So now it's all about efficiency. Then it's about how you load the pole and for how long you can load the pole. That's the real gymnastic component of it. And then, or part A of gymnastic, really aggressive gymnastic component of it. And then there's how you receive the energy back from the pole and let that throw you up in the air. And that's there's a real skill and kind of awareness component to that, making sure that you're able to fly your body in an optimal path over the bar. There's the component of how well you can celebrate when you land on the mat and create some vibe for the crowd, which some people are naturals at. I was not one of those people, but there were some greats. Tim Lobinger was my favourite German pole vaulter. He was just a wonderful celebrator, and I wish I'd had some of his charisma.
So when you said earlier that it wasn't a sacrifice for you, but how many hours a week do you train? What are you doing whilst you're keeping yourself busy, surviving, food on the table and all the above? You still got to train every day of the week. But what's the sort of dedication required? For
me, I'll go sort of like up to 2007. I was working kind of 20 hours a week in property development.
Yep.
As a graduate and sort of into early acquisition and development management roles. And then I would probably on top of that train 20 to 30 hours a week, depending on the week. And then I'd have study and all the other bits and pieces and recovery and all that sort of stuff around that. So it ended up being like 50, 60 hour weeks when you kind of add all the bits up that you try and fit in there around it.
When I was speaking to swimmers just recently, they know their time's 4 years ahead.
What they're going to do?
Yeah. Effectively, based on their diet, based on their training, and based on their how many Ks they're doing, etc. Yeah. What is yours similar?
Nah, like you kind of just end up with these bounds. We're more prone to injury in athletics, so staying healthy, and particularly the ages that we were, like how you're physically maturing and how much stronger you get. A lot of those swimmers are pretty early developers in terms of how they develop.
Yep.
Whereas a lot of people that become quite good at athletics develop late.
Yep.
So it's just a different world. It's not like that at all, and you have this new level of realization every 12 months where you do a preparation, you go out and test yourself and see where you're at. And sometimes you surprise yourself with how much you've improved. And for me, I had a couple of those massive leaps, and other years you're disappointed that you haven't improved as much as you thought you would. But it's always just sort of a benchmarking exercise, and then you know what you're going away to work on the following preparation.
And the challenges for injury, how do you overcome those?
Have a good team around you that help you get through it, and then discipline around following your rehab programs. Not everyone has that, and not everyone has the ability to take time and follow instruction and dot all the I's and cross all the T's. So I think that's the main one. Just and try and with age and experience, not being in too much of a rush to get back and set yourself back further.
And look, selecting a coach, Steve, must be that's it. So critical.
Yeah, you got to know who's right for you at the time. What are you missing? How's the dynamic going to be? Are they going to give you what you need? And importantly, and when maybe it's gone beyond its useful state for both coach and athlete, because there's a life cycle for a lot of those things. And I think for the most part, I knew when that was right, and mostly I followed my gut. And probably the one time that I didn't follow my gut was, I look back and my gut was right that I should have made a change at a point in time when I didn't. So use your intuition, have some good people around you giving advice that are impartial, because everyone else has their bias. And I would say that's the same in your career. Have your mentors around you that are impartial. Those that are in your organisation where you're working now, they've got a bias. They want you around. You're doing a job for them. You're part of their kind of value creation, and they're not going to give you an unbiased view. You need someone outside of the bubble to be able to give you good advice on that, or you can bounce what you're feeling up against.
And during your career, just out of interest, how much you're watching your competition regularly, or you're focusing on you?
I enjoyed the competition. Like, I enjoyed being motivated by the results of others.
Yeah, okay.
And having that inspire how hard I had to work and wanting to have that as a benchmark that I had to beat. In a competition, I would try and focus on my own process as much as I could. But in that training phase, you've got to know what's out there and what it's going to take, and know that what I'm doing is good enough to beat that. So there's an awareness of it.
So Steve, taking some of all the training you've had, mental techniques, strategies, etc., how have you applied them to your corporate career?
Well, there's the things that I just take for granted, like just the discipline of just dusting yourself off and getting up day after day after day. I don't find that remotely challenging. It's not even a sort of thought for me, and it's what I recognise that in a lot of other high-performing athletes that move across. That's just a natural part of who they are, and they have that natural tenacity that they apply to their work ethic in the corporate space or in the work environment. I think the big one I bring is the vision piece, being able to have a big idea and know that, yes, that can seem huge and it can seem challenging and a long way down the road, but knowing that a big idea that's down the road is just it's just a series of steps to get you there at the end, and the art is how you break that down into an achievable plan that can ultimately get you to where you want to go. And the challenge for me has always been coming from an individual sport where it was my vision and my plan, and I was the only one that had to know, was getting everyone on board with the same vision as a leader in business, getting everyone to see the same thing and believe the same thing and understand that the plan was the right plan to get us all there, and being open to feedback and challenges of other people's ways of getting there as well to ultimately get to the best outcome. So that's been my learning and evolution over the last 8-9 years of being back in the workforce after having the experience in sport.
So, okay, you built a career in property development and been a CEO, and also set up your own business and established that as an entrepreneur. What type of people do you surround yourself with then? Who's going to join your team?
Everyone in my team. I'm a team of 4 right now.
Yep.
I've got everyone in my team would drive themselves as much physically as they would mentally. That's not to say that would always be the case, but 4 of us all do.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone exercises outside of work. It's a part of how they keep themselves balanced. It's a part of how they balance their personal and family and work lives is through exercise and movement. I see the value in that, and somewhat that's a coincidence, because that doesn't apply to everyone that has been across the teams that I've been involved with. It certainly doesn't apply to all the high performers I've worked with in business. But of the 4 that I'm working with, 3 others that I'm working with now, we all are that way. It's more just the I would say being able to be driven by a purpose, I think is quite important. Like that's a big part of what we do now. So having a driving force behind the work beyond just earning a crust.
Yep.
And then the other piece is the ability to have and be on both sides of honest conversations is a absolute must. So either be able to deliver truth to someone else or to hear it and understand it and take it on and move forward with that.
Okay. The transition coming out of sport. A lot of athletes are on a super high and it takes a long time to get back up. Did you go for a down period?
Emotionally, definitely. Yeah, I transitioned out of sport at the same time I became a dad. So it was full on change. And I kind of had a window of sort of 18 to 24 months where I wasn't quite sure of my career trajectory either. So I was very lost in terms of who I was and what I wanted out of life.
Yep.
And what was motivating me. And financially uncertain as well through that period, which can't be understated as having gone from like quite financially secure for a period of 4 or 5 years to having more financial obligation than I'd ever had, having a family and less financial certainty. So that you can see how that can make people go one of two ways.
Yep.
But it really made me spring to action and know that I had to try some things to figure out how I was going to have a career that I cared about and would get me out of bed like my last career did or like my sporting career did.
Yep.
And provide for my family. So those were my two things that I knew I needed to find, and I knew there was a world that would exist where that could happen, and I could jump out of bed as motivated for this next phase of my life as I'd done for my previous. Even though I wasn't feeling it then, I knew if I just was true to wanting that to be the outcome, I could kind of step through that process and eventually get there. And it took me 4 years really through different roles and experience to actually find what that was and where that was. And ultimately that was where I really found that was at Resimax Group.
Yep.
Where I ended up being CEO, and it was the relationship with the managing director, Ozzie Kier, of that business, and having that kind of coach and mentor within the organisation really suited me and drove me, and having a great culture, like a real family type culture within the team, and having someone that was hugely ambitious and wanted to have a big vision like Ozzie, and to work with that and bring that to life was really exciting and made me grow and got me just as excited to get out of bed as sport did, which was great.
So building communities, that was the big one?
Yeah, building communities, building a business, like figuring out what the business was, building a team of people that wanted to work together and deliver for each other and
Like you still
solving complex problems.
Do you get the buzz still?
Yeah, I enjoy work every day. I feel really lucky. I think my brain doesn't really switch off for it. Like a lot of ideas are coming to me at 3 and 4 in the morning about what I'm working on and the problems I'm trying to solve or solutions we're trying to put in place for someone else. So it's always happening with me, and that's how I used to feel about sport. So it's all there, and I love it. And it's more of the same. Just being surrounded by good people trying to do good things is a good recipe for life, I would say.
Can I just take you back a little bit? The transition from sport to the next part of life. As you said, not everybody has the easy route. Is there something more that Australian sport or sporting bodies, sporting clubs should take more responsibility? It's almost like, thanks for being a champ. Your days are over. You're done, and you're sort of old news. You've been replaced. Is that too harsh a statement, or what do you think?
I don't know. I think there's plenty out there for you if you want to look for the support. But I just think most athletes, when they're athletes, they want to be athletes and not worry about any of that stuff. Those that take the opportunities that are out there and the resources that are out there can set themselves up well for a framework for what they can do after sport. And those that reach out and ask, there's people that will help them. There's individuals that are aligned with sport they'll take a meeting, they'll have a coffee, they'll create an introduction. Like, you've got access to stuff that actually no one else has access to. Like, everyone in life has transitions and changes they have to make from high school to university, from university into the workforce.
Yep.
No one's providing them with unlimited services at their disposal to make that easier for them, but that does exist for you in sport. There are heaps of people, heaps of resources for you in sport, but a lot of people just choose not to do it. So I would say, does sport have to do more? No, I don't necessarily think so. I think there's everything that you would need to get a start and more more beyond what the sports provide, if you're willing to put yourself out there and talk to people and actually take ownership of that for yourself and not be a victim, is really hard to, but just actually take it on board. And any athletes that are listening, I'm happy to have a coffee with you and talk about this as well. And I'm sure many other athletes that have transitioned from sport into work or whatever, they would do the same. So send them a message, call them, reach out. Like, you never know what it's going to be. I would do 15 of them a year. Easy.
Oh, would you?
Just coffees with athletes that are transitioning. And some people retire and I've had like something to do with them. I'll reach out to them and say, hey, do you want to have a coffee? Like, interested to hear what you got planned for the next little bit of your life. Like, can I help? One of my 4 that I've hired in my business is Mitch Hannon. I've hired a footy player who was transitioning out of their sporting career, and I wanted to be a part of them getting into the workforce and building their next career. I know he's going to have a great work ethic. He's a qualified architect. He's going to fit in well with our team. He wants to be in the development space. So he's come on board into my team. So that all just came from a connection through someone saying, hey, here's someone transitioning out from sport. We have a coffee with them. He ended up getting a job with me. So it's genuine, it's real, it's out there. There are these pathways for you. But sometimes the reality is you've also got to be humble when you're in those positions and understand I'm not going to be a rock star. Like, I've got to be ready to take backward steps and start from the beginning, just like I did at the start of my sporting career, and build something. And it won't be easy, just like what I did in sport was not easy. There'll be hurdles and things to overcome. There'll be seasons that go well and seasons that go badly. And it's all about using those tools that you've got at your disposal that are still yours to manage your way through those. That was a bit of a rant. Sorry for that.
No, that's good. Just out of interest, as a top athlete and also now business person, have you always had supreme confidence in your own ability? And if so, where does that come from?
I've always been willing to have a crack, is what I will say. And ever since I was young, and it doesn't always go well, but I've always been willing to put myself out there and to see how it goes and then learn from that. And what I've learned from it is it never goes as bad or as good as you think it's going to go. You're going to fall somewhere in the middle probably. And that's something to work from as a base. So, and then confidence comes from doing that over and over again. And I don't think it's any different from sport to work. I've put myself like in the deep end in both fields ahead of my time just because I'm happy to have a crack.
Yep.
And I just do the best I can in that environment. If that's sitting on a board, if it's leading a business, whatever, I did all of those things before I should have. No question, without question. But I had good people around me. I had people that understood that I was not ready. But they saw that I could maybe get there, and they were willing to take that bet and let me learn by making lots of mistakes along the way and understanding that there would be a payoff at the end of it. And so I think it's not, the confidence is not that I can do this now. It's that I think I can figure it out. Like, I can back myself to have a process of iteration where I'll get better and better over time, and eventually I'll be able to do it.
So the naysayers don't worry you at all, or they just actually edge you on?
They're handy because they're probably right.
Yeah, do you listen to them?
Yeah. They probably picked up on something like that's a weakness or something that needs improvement or a mistake or whatever. So I think that's important. But does it mean you give up? Like, oh, I got something wrong. None of us are perfect. None of us get it right every time. But if no one's trying, well, none of us are moving forward. So, like, we can't all rely on the 1 or 2 people that are already there at a particular level to keep doing all the things. Like, that's not how it works. That's not how progress works. And I'll be bringing something that they don't have to my style of leadership or to my vision for a company or for a project or whatever it might be. But there'll be other team members that'll be bringing their own elements as well. So, no, I think naysayers useful, very useful. The critic's good. Doesn't mean you give up.
You're listening to No Limitations with special guest Steve Hooker. In our next episode, I sit down with Adrian Turner, co-founder and CEO of Exoflare.
We're on a cycle of learning and development that I think is going to be hard for others to catch. We're not invincible. The odds are against us that we're going to succeed. I mean, they just are for any company that's starting. But this problem has to be solved, and we may go all the way to solve it. I hope we do. Everything's lining up the right way. And for me, this feels stronger. The market pull feels stronger than it did in cybersecurity in the early days.
Be sure to join us on our next episode And now, back to the show. And what's your thoughts in general when you meet Australians and business, etc.? Are we trying to break the ceiling, or are we just lacking that vision, or what do you think? And it's a big general sweeping question, but what's your gut feel about where the mindset is out there for Australians taking the world on or business on?
There's the full spectrum. So I think there's a huge part of Australia that I'm jealous of, that has a really stable, consistent economic situation. They know what their work is, it's repeatable, and they've been doing it for a long time, and it's relatively stable. And around that, they can live the best lifestyle in the world.
Yeah, pretty safe too, right?
And safe, right?
Yeah.
Safe, from a legal perspective, no one's coming in stealing your business or anything like that. You're pretty well protected, healthcare, schools, environment, all that sort of stuff's pretty good wrapped around you. And you can live this incredible lifestyle without having to push too hard, because you don't need that much to have a wonderful lifestyle within Australia. And I'm a bit jealous of that, to be honest. It's a great way to live, to love being in that environment. You'll live the happiest life in this country if you want to be like that. And there's a big chunk of Australia that's like that. But then there's so many people here that push and want to take things on and want to innovate. And part of that is being isolated, and part of it is wanting to punch above your weight or prove yourself or whatever it might be, or just because, or you're part of the population that, because we're so isolated, has had to become crazy good problem solvers that just look at the world in a unique way, or part of our huge migrant population that have come from different experience and perspectives, and they say, oh, there's a way we can just do this so much better here that we haven't done in the past, but it kind of blends in with the Australian way of doing things and creates something new and unique. So there's the full spectrum, but that kind of healthy bit in the middle of being comfortable and happy, that's not a bad thing. We've got a lot of that here, but it's not a bad thing. It's a great thing to have as a country. But then we've got these outliers as well that go hard and world's best in so many different areas. And I think that's a nice blend for Australia and our economy. It's probably one of the reasons why we've been such a strong performer for such a strong period of time.
Assume you like being uncomfortable.
I prefer uncomfortable. Yes, I like.
So what's the thrill out of it? Why do you like being uncomfortable?
It's just interesting. I think what drew me to pole vault was that it was a problem-solving exercise every time. I had to figure out how to make it work, whether it went well or went badly. Go back, do it again, figure it out. And I just find that that's what I like now. I find a problem and I want to work with good people to solve it and move that problem forward. Yeah, it's what gets me out of bed. Just doing the same thing over and over again would not.
Okay, so talk us through Resimax. So that was a pretty significant part of your career, wasn't it?
Yep. Yeah, huge.
What was the big learnings there for you? Someone backed you too.
Yeah, that's the big one, right? So Aussie's the biggest part of that.
So talk us through Aussie.
Hugely entrepreneurial individual, has a calculator in his head but can't work an Excel spreadsheet, and super high EQ, just knows people so well, both personally, one-on-one person can understand what's happening with that person, but then kind of understands how people work at a macro level as well, and has all of that underpin just the most unbelievably insightful business decisions. So that's how I would summarize him. And so to be around a person like that, that's got all of that, but just this enormous capacity to do lots at once, was amazing, because we could have a real breadth of work that we were doing across a vertically integrated business that was land development, sales and marketing, domestic construction, landscaping business, hospitality elements, all of this kind of happening in one ecosystem with an in-house team meant we got to do so many different things. And it meant you could bring new ideas to life, some of them being good, a lot of them not, but always learning from them and having them as part of a growing business and a kind of growth culture within a business that ultimately meant that the business grew in a really positive way and the team grew in a really positive way with a particular kind of person that was suited to that sort of environment.
So what do you reckon you got the CEO gig? What was he looking for?
Why did I get it?
Yeah, and what was he looking for? What was he looking for?
Right place, right time, I think, was part of it. It was at a point in time where grown beyond himself and needed someone that could be his right-hand man, I think. And so as a, you know, and that really was the role that I had as a CEO, was as a right-hand man with Oz. It was co-leadership of the business with clear areas that we took responsibility for between us. And I just think he saw in me someone he could trust. I saw in him someone I could trust, which was very important to me. And I think that was the foundation of it, I think. And also, like, he saw someone he could coach, I think, which is what he wanted.
And
I saw someone who would coach me.
Yeah.
I think that was the kind of the nexus of it.
How do you go about your communication to your team? Are you a one-on-one? You a walk the floor? Like, what have you learnt?
Horses for courses, I think. It's not really about how I communicate. It's how this is what I've tried to learn. It's about how the person who you're trying to communicate with needs to be communicated with, because everyone hears things differently, sees things differently, reads things differently, interprets things differently. And so just trying to learn what that thing is for that individual or that team or that group to kind of to get a shared understanding of what we're trying to do. And then so much is listening. So not just the talking and the kind of one-way thing, but really trying to hear what's coming back, what can we learn, how can we make things easier, better, trying to be a better listener. And then having good filter on that listening as well. Like, everyone's going to have a view, but then it's trying to have that consistent listening across the broader group, just to make sure you can see trends, pick what's real, what's maybe an individual, what's more of a group trend that needs addressing.
All right. And how do you paint a vision?
Yeah, so that's a good one. I initially thought, oh, cool, I just do a PowerPoint presentation. Here's what we're going to do. And everyone's just like, yeah, I get it. And that is just the furthest thing from the truth, because it's so much more complicated than that. And a vision needs to be so multifaceted. It might be what it feels like to get there. It might be what our customers feel when they get there. It might be what the financial outcome for our organization is when we get there. It might be a product. It might be a campaign. Like, it could be anything. Like, all of those things can form part of a vision of the one thing. Then the critical thing then is getting back to a clearly articulated plan that is these steps that will get you to that outcome, and everyone having an understanding of their role within that plan. And so that's where the work is in all of that, so that every single part of that process believes, I know my bit, I believe my bit will get us there if all those other people do their bit. And I'm happy to talk with all of them about their bit, so that we're all pushing the same line. So purpose is the thing I talk about a lot. Mm-hmm. I believe if you've got that in place, then you can turn up to work with purpose every day. We're going towards this vision. Here's how we're going to get there. Let's do it. As soon as you're turning up and you're like, oh, I'm not really feeling it today. Like, I haven't had much of a vibe for the last 2 weeks. It's like, then you have the discussion. Then communication is important, because in particular, because you're like, why aren't you feeling it? It's probably because you're not feeling like the plan is getting to the vision, or the vision's not really what we thought it was, or we're losing clarity on what that, or over there they're not thinking the same thing that we're thinking over here. That's when that purpose starts to waver a little bit, that then that's not all fully lined up. But when it is, everyone's on. Like, you've been in those moments where everyone's, like you see in footy teams, everyone can see they're on the grand final. We know the process we've got to do to get there. We turn up to training every day. Everyone knows that feeling. I had that feeling in the lead up to Beijing. So being in that kind of flow, you know what that's like. But you also know when it's not there, it's like, oh, this is feeling hard. This is feeling like we're kind of walking through treacle. I'm just wanting to turn up 10 minutes later. I'm not wanting to do the extra stuff. Like, why am I not feeling it? And it's probably because there's a bit of a disconnect between those two things.
So you spot that pretty quickly?
No, I'm probably too much of an optimist. Other people around me are better pessimists. So I need that balance of the people who are like, I don't think it's going as well as you think it is, Steve. So yeah, that's an important part of my team.
Is business sport to you in that way? I'm competing against the enemy down the road. I'm taking them on. I'm going to surround myself by a great team.
No, I don't think
it's not.
Business is like sport.
You don't think so?
In that way.
Okay.
There's only one winner in sport.
Okay.
Whereas I think people can go really well together. So I'm more like, business is more like community for me than sport. Or community sport maybe might be the better approach, where everyone can, like, you can rise the tide together. I'm a big believer in that. Now, not everyone is. Like, a lot of people are like hardcore competitive in business, and that's what they believe. Or I'm more partnership focused, and I think there's plenty to go around in business where there's only one gold medal to go around in athletics. It feels slightly different to me in that way, and that's certainly the approach I have in business. I'll always want to do well, and I'll always want to push, but I enjoy when I see that happening in parallel to me as well, because that's useful for both of us to kind of keep pushing forward.
So number one in market share isn't a key driver?
For me,
No.
no. Number one in market share?
Yeah, you're the CEO of the property development company. I know there's others out there, but within just the space that you're playing.
The business I'm working in right now.
I was talking. I know. Tell me previous. I'll come to yours in a second.
My previous job.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. It was different. So no, we were doing things our way, and so there was no real comparison with other businesses because no other businesses were like our business.
Okay.
So it's not the same. Like, it's not like everyone's on the same track running the same race at the same time. We were doing our thing in our way. And so it didn't feel like we were competing with anyone at all. There were some elements, like little bits where you'd go in and there would be a small amount of competition on a deal or something like that.
Yep.
Some things you got to win, some things you got to get the outcome, all that sort of stuff. That's competitive. I can see that, and that kind of brings that out in me. But overall, in terms of the business, the focus was on your own performance, not kind of irrespective of everyone else. Like our focus was almost entirely on our own performance and our own measures, our own metrics.
All right.
Yeah, so there was not one market share graph that we ever had.
That's interesting. And what was the results of under your
We
leadership?
grew our
there?
market share massively, yeah.
Okay.
Can't tell you what it is, can't tell you what percentage it is, but it went from not much to a whole lot.
And why did everybody buy it then?
Internally or?
Oh, actually, that's the first thing. And what do your customers think from it then?
Yeah, I think our customers like that story because our whole proposition was built around them and doing something that no one else was doing for them. And it was the vertical integration piece. It was we will do all the things and you can just deal with us and we want to build a long-term relationship with you as a customer. So that was the proposition.
Okay.
And our customers liked that a lot. And they weren't getting that from our competitors, I don't think. Or certainly not from the majority of our competitors. So that was why that worked for our customers. And internally, I think we liked the same thing. I think that we liked the fact that we had responsibility for the whole thing. And if any bit of it was to fall down, there was no one outside of our group to point the finger at. It was us. And we had to just make sure we solved it within our team.
All right. So what have you set yourself a challenge for now? You've got a business you've set up, haven't you?
Yeah. So I've set up my own property consulting business. And my focus is on problem solving. And we've been at it sort of for 18 months now. Affordable and sustainable.
Where's your focus? Where's the
affordable
focus?
and sustainable housing.
Okay.
Is my focus. And so there's two parts to my business. There's development management consulting. So that's developing land on behalf of other landowners, corporate or private landowners. And then there's a part of our business which I call Future of Housing. And that's really all about new ways of building. How can we make the industry more efficient? How do we work with architects, builders to come up with new ways of doing things that are going to be more efficient, basically, and through efficiency become more sustainable and more affordable.
Yep.
Both in the construction phase and the operational phase. And then it works really well when we've got some new concept that we think does that and achieves that in a commercial way, and we've got projects that we can apply that on as pilots or proof of concepts, so it can then be taken on as a more standard operating model for whoever we've built it out with. So that's a kind of summary of what I'm interested in doing, and there's some crossover into other areas. We're doing some work with some social housing and how we can help bring a bit more efficiency into that space. And it's wonderful work to be doing, and it's work that I thought would becoming more and more important, you know, when the business plan was first put together a couple of years ago, and has only become more and more important and more part of the dialogue in Australia over the last 2 years, and just really excited for putting my time and energy into being a small part of trying to solve what is a national problem.
So talk us through it, Steve. What is the future of housing? What should we be looking for?
I am a big fan of, in terms of construction, well, we've got to come up with some efficient planning pathways. Let's start with supply.
Yep.
So we've got to come up with some more efficient planning pathways.
So we need some land?
We've got lots of land in Australia,
Why don't
so we just need land that's got the right planning mechanisms in place to allow for housing to be delivered on it quite quickly, and in a way that allows for efficient construction method to be applied to it. So there's a few parts to that. That's a big one. Then there's what we're building. So we've just got to build smaller footprint housing. That's a huge part of the issue. We've been progressively building bigger and bigger houses for the last 60 years, and we need to right-size housing and get it the same as most of the other like developed countries around the world. Like you look at European-style housing sizes, and that's what we've got to get back to. We've got the biggest housing in the world per capita, and it's very expensive to build and very expensive to run now that we're looking at cost of electricity.
Yep.
So we've got to get right-sized housing. Then there's how you build it. So we haven't really evolved all that much in terms of residential housing I'm talking about here, residential construction, all that much. It's timber frame, brick veneer kind of housing. It's still a huge proportion of what we're building right now. And we've got to continue to kind of push into the word that we're sort of loving at the moment is elemental prefabrication, not modular construction, but elemental prefabrication, getting the parts of the house done in a way that is able to be assembled on site. And there is an element of that is more efficient and better if we get to more standardization of our housing and less customization and individualization of our housing, understanding that, yes, housing is a huge part of our identity in Australia, but if we don't have one, then what are we saying about our identity as a country? So being comfortable that if we recognize that we need to industrialize how we build things, and it has to be more, to do that, it has to be more standardized, and that will make it more affordable to build and buy and more affordable to live in ultimately as well, then that is a small compromise to say, okay, my kitchen is the same kitchen as the house next door. Like, we live in apartment buildings already that do this. They don't care. It's not going to, like, it's not a huge negative. We can do this more at scale. So then there's also structuring as well, which is a whole nother component to it. Like, how can we structure projects and home ownership in ways that are more efficient as well to manage it. So, and finance. So those, I would say, me breaking it down very quickly for you, the elements that I'm looking at and trying to explore. And I love working with clever people in the industry to try and resolve some of those issues together and just put not get it all the way, not saying we're right, everyone else is wrong, but just put like something out there that says, here's maybe a way that we can look at it that might be part of a solution. Because the true solution will be everything. To deliver the amount of houses we need in Australia over the next 10 years to support our population the way that we live.
Yep.
It's 100 solutions that all need to be delivered simultaneously. It's not one or two big ideas that are going to change things. So we'll play a small role in some of those things, and we hope that the knock-on of that is good commercial models that make sense for a customer, the environment, and mean we can have more houses for everyone to live in that don't cost them as much to run and live in.
Okay, so how are you going to grow your business? Are you going to go to attract people, but are you going to, what's your thinking about how you get the very best to come and join you? Is it going to be part through equity? All this sort of stuff now you've got to start thinking about, I assume?
Yeah, I've got a pretty good plan around that. I mean, I'll be a bit coy about how much of I'm going to share, I think.
Okay, yeah.
But let me talk more broadly.
Okay.
I think more and more the workforce coming through want to do work that they believe has purpose and really does, and that they can see the outcome of tangibly. I think they are happy. That will drive them more than necessarily the scale of the pay packet that they will get. People will want to come to a place where they can learn and be respected, and where they have a bit of fun as well, like where there's a lively kind of like community of people that come together to work on interesting work. So that's the sort of environment that I would like to create and believe we've started creating within our team. And it's just about the art is scaling that and keeping that kind of those feelings and characteristics in place as you grow and get busy and as things become more challenging over time as businesses grow.
And what's your point of difference to your customers?
Oh, well, in this case, lots, depending on the project that we're doing. So for our customers at the moment, our customers are generally landowners at this stage of development where we're at. So it's the service we provide to them. Our point of difference is the fact that we do these two things. We're looking at operational models for housing and delivering projects at the same time. And there's opportunity that comes out of those two things. There's also the quality of people that we have within our organisation. Our directors in our business are really highly regarded individuals within the industry who bring a huge reputation with them. So you know you're going to get quality work. That's kind of the starting point of a development management consultancy firm.
Yep.
We've got this point of difference around industry engagement to figure out what's happening next and how that can be of benefit to your land holding and your project.
All right, without giving too much away, if we had a chat in 5 years' time, what's the other scale of the business going to be? And are you sticking to the original plan, or how do you go about that?
So for us, it's about impact. So it's not really about the scale of our business, I wouldn't say. It's more how we can impact housing. So there would be a number of housing approvals that we would have facilitated through our work.
Yep.
And then, so that's probably like at the top level, like new housing facilitation. And then underneath that would be like quality, affordability and sustainability of that housing. So what does that look like within the housing that we've had approved? So that's how we'll be testing it.
Okay, all right. Now, if you were Prime Minister for a day, what would you do to help this country in sport?
Help this country in sport? I don't have as good an answer for that one. What would I do to help this country in sport?
We got enough participation out there?
Yeah, that's where my head's going. It's I think we're doing elite sport okay on the world stage. Can always be done better, but we're doing a pretty good job. I would say the really interesting space right now is where sport and recreation overlap. So the examples of that would be the emergence of run clubs, as an example. So the only time you would have been in a run club, like 20 years ago, you would have been part of an athletics club. But now I'm part of a social media running club. And I think it's amazing. This is, so like, if we're talking about sport, recreation, movement, that kind of dynamic of, and then how community overlaps with that, that's what's super interesting to me about where sport is now and what the opportunities are within sport. And I think certainly where the next generation of people that are coming through are going to start to really see themselves, because competitive sport will have a place, but will become more and more niche over time, whereas like this community kind of club around movement and recreation, I think will boom, and it's only just begun where that will go, and that'll be into a whole range of weird and wonderful places that get people out, moving, connecting with each other, which is what we want from sport in the first place. Yep. We only really had competitive sport once upon a time. Now there's this whole new way of doing it, which I think is great. So how do we accelerate that and become the kind of recreation, movement, and community connections best country in the world for that?
You didn't talk about funding.
Huh?
You didn't talk about funding for sport.
You don't need to fund it. So that's the beauty of that whole setup, is you don't need to fund that. That self-funding, people are doing it because it's following their interests and it's getting them connected to it. So what funding does that require? People are starting these things up on Instagram right now. So that requires no funding whatsoever, and that will have the biggest net benefit on the nation in terms of how happy and healthy we are as a country, I think, if we can get that stuff going.
And what do you think about e-gaming and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, I think you're going to need this stuff in the real world to be to complement that thing which is not going anywhere. So e-gaming will be huge, is massive, and will only get bigger over time. And I think having physical movement elements to it wherever possible is great if we can manage it, or having physical movement recreation that sits outside of that. And e-gamers, they're again, so many of these people are going to be high performers, and they will eventually realize in time, as like the level of performance in e-gaming goes up, they're going to realize, if I can keep a lower heart rate than my opposition, I'm going to be better at this. I'm going to get outside and I'm going to do my 10K walk every day because I know that's going to be good for my e-gaming. So they can coexist, those kind of two ideas.
Look, out of interest, the Olympics coming up, in athletics and field and track, is there any particular countries coming through which has been under the radar for a number of years that we should be looking at, who are just developing different programs, thinking differently? That you've always had, obviously Russia at one stage, China and US dominate, but is there anything else we should be looking for?
At a lead sport, investment pays big dividends right now. You hire the best coaches, you build great facilities, you'll get an uptick in performance. And so the ones to watch in Paris are the home team, the French, and the Japanese team, because they're the two biggest investments. So you look across the spectrum, home team always performs. Everyone knows that, right? Yeah. But you look at the results from the home team at the following games. Australia in Athens, massive, huge. Australia in Athens, almost our best performance ever, our best away performance ever by a mile.
Yeah, but what about London after that?
Yeah, but the drop-off comes later, right? But you get the halo effect for 4 years. So Athens for Australia, massive. The Greeks, don't worry about them in London, forget that. But the British team in Rio, enormous results. So the next one to watch is Japan and then, don't worry about the Brazilians in Tokyo, but Japan, massive home results at their games. Watch how they go in Paris. So that will be one to watch, just because it's had the funding behind it, the infrastructure behind it, and all that sort of stuff. And you can buy those results. We know that that's the case because you're buying in coaching IP, you're building facilities, you're investing in pathways, you're doing all the things that you've got to do, and that pays dividends for a period of time, but it does drop after a while.
And so where's Australia in that journey? Are we investing enough? Are we getting the best coaches?
Hopefully at the beginning of another one. I haven't seen all of the announcements. There was some. It looked like there were some budget allowances for future announcements about sport funding in the lead up to 2032. We have the light on the hill. So in terms of a country gathering together around a vision, that is there again like it was in 2000. And it's a long way out, but and everyone's going through, and understandably, everyone's going through really tough times right now financially.
Yep.
And it's hard to see money spent on sport, but it is the money that gets spent on sport is a drop in the ocean. I'm an efficiency guy, it's my buzzword. I'll talk about it all day. We can find lots of efficiencies to unlock some small amount of money that will have a big impact in terms of how we'll perform at elite sport over the next 8 years. That will result in us having a team that we can really celebrate and get around when 2032 rolls around.
Any particular athletes that you encountered that really struck out to you, really made a mark to you, the way they conducted themselves, their preparation, the way they were going to win? And then I'm going to ask you about flipping that into business. What is leadership?
Catherine Freeman is the one. I was a young kid watching her prepare, and she would come down and do sessions at local tracks all around Melbourne to kind of dodge the paparazzi and all that sort of stuff. So I'd be training at Box Hill one day and Freeman would be doing a workout. And it was just amazing to watch. Just turn up, do her job, head home. It just methodical about how she went about it, believed in her team. And I happened to be in the stadium the night that she ran, and it's something that'll be with me forever. And then I've been lucky to get to know her after that, and she's just a wonderful person. So that's the standout for me. I mean, how she was able to absorb pressure and live out what she knew she was capable of doing was phenomenal. So that's definitely that. I think that's the one that jumps out for me.
Okay.
And then the leadership in business?
Yeah, just people have struck you from what you've met. Leaders. What is leadership to you?
The biggest thing I've learned is the best leaders are the ones that they stand up in the hardest times. Anyone can look good in the good times. The best leaders stand up when it's really tough. And so I think we've seen some really strong leaders emerge over the last 3 or 4 years, particularly through COVID. Organisations that had good leadership did really well. And then organisations with leadership that wasn't up for it did less so. And that, for me, having gone through that, I think looks like having honest discussions about really hard decisions. That's the big one that I learned. And being able to make them early off a good base of information and an element of gut feel about where things might go. So that would be my summary of it. And it's not fancy or pretty or anything like that. It's actually the in the trenches stuff that is the essence of good leadership that I've seen.
And what about you as an individual? How do you continue to grow and develop? What do you read? What do you think? What do you watch? What do you give you some time to develop?
I believe so much of this happens through osmosis. So I try and spend as much time with good people as I can. and listen to them, listen to people that are far more experienced than I am, that are been through a lot more iterations of what, I don't know, the economy looks like, or what workforces look like, what sentiment looks like. Listen to them. What are they saying? How are they seeing things? I come in with my biases, and often it's people with vastly different backgrounds or from different industries or whatever that I'm in. I just try and listen and learn from them as much as possible, and I really like doing that in person. And then internally, it's going on the journey with my new team as to what sort of business do we want to have, and having those regular discussions about what that looks like and how do we do it.
So, Steve, what advice would you give those young athletes walking through the opening ceremony in Paris?
There's two things that are can be both true, and they sound like they're opposites. It'll feel like everything that happens over the next 2 weeks is what will define you for the rest of your life. And part of that's useful, and you can use that. And if that's good for you, if that makes you feel good, and it will feel like that, and for a period of time, that will be life. But in the long run, it's also not true. It's just some part of your life and part of what will happen for you. So you use the positives of that for yourself, but also know that there's this safety net, which is the relationships in your life don't change. Your real relationships don't change no matter how it goes. So that's who you truly are. You're not the outcome of your results over the next 2 weeks.
And if you're looking back at that young bloke warming up at the track as a 12-year-old, what advice would you give him now?
Yeah, never stop having a crack. Never be afraid to have a go at something.
On that, Steve, it's been a real pleasure to have you today. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
You've been listening to No Limitations.